New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
New Thought Media Network is proud to present New Thought's Roots and Branches with Reverend Dr. Ruth Miller. Join us every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Mountain Time. Tune in live or watch anytime on our YouTube channel. Discover the rich history of New Thought and its impact on modern spirituality. Join Reverend Dr. Ruth Miller as she shares insights, stories, and teachings that inspire and uplift. Experience deep insights and transformative teachings that connect you to the roots of New Thought. Visit our YouTube channel to catch up on past episodes and join us live every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Connect with us and be part of the journey.
Well, hello there. I am Ruth Miller, and this is New Thought Roots and Branches. And for the last few weeks, or this few weeks, actually, starting last week, we're talking about the Brits. Last time it was Thomas Troward. This time it's James Allen. Next time it'll be Emmett Fox. Thomas Troward, as we talked last time, was brought up in India and worked in India. James Allen, though, was brought up in Charles Dickens, England, and actually predates Troward a little bit. But because Troward is such a dignified Victorian, and well, we'll find out that James Allen is hardly that. As we look at our chart of folks who have contributed in New Thought, you will see way off over in the corner, there is James Allen there. He's directly influenced by Ralph Waldo Emerson and also Shakespeare, but I couldn't make the line work there. And he directly influenced most of the modern thinkers in New Thought. He's not even on the next chart because, well, he's British, and almost everyone else on this chart is in the American tradition. When we go into the next slide, though, you can see this is no tidy Victorian gentleman. He was very much the bohemian. He did grow up in Charles Dickens, England, as you can see in the next slide. He was born in Leicester, England, an industrial town, in 1864. And his father was a factory worker and was able to help his kids go to school, which was very unusual in an industrial town. And he was able to save up enough money to go over to the United States. So when James was 14, his father got on a boat and went across to the States. But unfortunately, like so many immigrants, and if you watched the movie Gangs of New York, you know, he was rolled like the day he got off the ship. Everything was taken except his pocket watch, which did identify him. And so they received notice when James was 15 that his father was killed in England. And there was no money. He had taken it. So immediately, James walked into the local factory where his father had worked and began to work on the factory floor, just like any other kid at his time. However, he could read and write. Very unusual for kids of his time. And the managers saw this and immediately put him into a clerical position, which gave him access to a room full of books. Oh my goodness, this was a gold mine. Yes. They were those little books, you know, Shakespeare, if you've ever seen where, you know, a play of Shakespeare is in one book, sonnets are in another one, etc. So there were those little bound books, and he was able to take one home every couple of nights, and he would work his 12-hour day, and he'd come home and be the man of the household at 15. And then he would curl up at night with a candle and his books. and he went into the realm of Shakespeare, and it was wonderful. And when he had read everything of Shakespeare 2 or 3 times, then, oh my goodness, a whole new set of books came in. So keep in mind, this is 1864. Now it's 1879 that we're talking about. And the Emersonian books, the books by Ralph Waldo Emerson, were being made available in England. And he was able to pick up the little books, each one of Ralph Waldo Emerson's essays and, again, his poetry, and just absorbed it all. As he was absorbing and learning, and his language is getting better, his owner made him, the owner of his factory, excuse me, not his owner, but the owner of his factory made him the secretary, the private secretary to the owner. And when that owner moved to London, he took James with him. So James had been supporting his family more and more effectively as he moved up the ranks, and now was able to leave in 1887 at the ripe old age of 23, leave home in Leicester and go into the grand big city of London. In the next slide, we see an image of what Leicester looked like at the time, and actually most British towns looked like on market days, which was most days, the big open squares surrounded by buildings. In fact, when I was in France, it looked exactly like this in some parts of France. So this was how it was done in the 1900s. In the next slide, we see what some of the things were that James got to experience in this new environment. Primarily, he discovered other people who were fascinated by books, the literary societies, and he got in touch with holistic health people. Now, some of you may remember that when we talked about Emily Cady, the same time period, she is looking at, she became a holistic health physician. Well, it was a very big thing in the 1880s. Who knew? In England as well as the US. He became the editor. This kid that left school at 15 became the editor of the Herald of a Golden Age, which was an international holistic health magazine. They had correspondence with people all over the world. It was a monthly issue, and there were letters in the issue. There's the same format as we've seen before. There's some theory. There's some description of what works, what doesn't work. There's some testimonials. Then there's conversation in the letters. And there are advertisements from people who are looking to offer their services or have products. That got him launched into this worldwide correspondence. And this job allowed him to get married. So he married Lily, who proceeded to be really the means by which he could do all the rest of his work. In the next chart, we find that what he is doing in that work is he's taking the ideas that Ralph Waldo Emerson provided, having to do with spiritual compensation, cause and effect, the concept of an oversoul, and all of these other ideas that Emerson's essays laid out, with the holistic health information that he had picked up working in this magazine environment. He also found a lot more books, and he was especially enamored of a book by Edwin Arnold that's really an extended poem that is a life of the Buddha, Gautama Buddha. So he began to understand more fully what we now would call the perennial philosophy. That is the core teachings present in all the major world traditions. Particularly, how can we blend and see the essence of the Christian precepts, which everyone in England was studying at the time, and these Buddhist precepts that he was beginning to have more and more contact with, both through the Edwin Arnold work and through his correspondence with people from other countries. So he launched his own magazine. He now had a name, he had a following, he had a mailing list. Very important. So he launched his own magazine. He called it The Light of Reason. And he would look at various Christian, Buddhist, other ideas from this intellectual understanding, doing a logical assessment in some cases, checking it out emotionally and experientially based on what he had been seeing in the previous 2 jobs that he had, And he continued to write letters, huge correspondence. Then, in 1901, he wrote a book. And that book was a prosperity book. We'll look at it shortly. But it was the opening of a floodgate. Over the next 14 years, he wrote 19 books, all of which had a profound impact on the people. And you can see in the next slide 7 of those books, one of which most of you have seen, As a Man Thinketh. That wasn't his first one. His first one was The Path of Prosperity. And the next one after As a Man Thinketh was From Poverty to Power. And that clearly was related to his own experience, right? From nothing to this position of being a global influencer. And then he shared specific examples in these other books. Above Life's Turmoil and Light on Life's Difficulties were taking the principles outlined in the previous books and applying them. The Heavenly Life was saying we can all choose to live a heavenly life. And we do so because we are masters of our own destiny, which links all the way back to those Shakespearean readings that he was doing way back when. So in these books, James Allen was able to, first of all, get the word out in some amazing ways, but also support himself. So in the next slide, we see that he is now considered a teacher. His stuff is going out all over the world. The more books he publishes, the more people are attracted to his life. So he and Lily bought a house in England, in Ilfracombe, which is looking at the Celtic Sea. So it's on the edge of Wales, and ran it as a guest house. Lily, that woman, she's amazing. She kept this place going so that he could do what he was doing. At the next bullet, every day, he would go up on the hillside. He would meditate overlooking the Celtic Sea. And then he would come inside and he would write based on what he had been meditating on. Then he would go out and garden and produced a lot of their food in that garden. And then the guests who were there, either locals who were coming over, some of whom bought homes to be near him, or the people coming in from around the world, would stay in their guest house. And they would spend the evenings. And ultimately, out of that, they created something they called the Brotherhood, people from all over the world who were following these ideas. And later it became called the Society of Virtue. If we look at the next slide, you can see the village of Ilfracombe and the water that is looking out over. It's still there, and his house is labeled. I don't happen to have a copy of that photo, though. James Allen made a huge difference for Ilfracombe and for the world with these books. Now, we've all heard, I'm sure you've heard, of the book As a Man Thinketh, because it's in all the self-help world. In fact, James Allen launched the self-help publishing world. Nobody else had done this sort of thing before. All of the things that you've heard from other teachers is really based on what he offered, which was based on what Emerson said, and what Buddha said, and what the Christian church said. Fascinating, isn't it? So James Allen from this beautiful little town would get to know and help many, many people. So let's look at some of his concepts in the next slide. The fundamental concept is mind is the master power that molds and makes. That's it. Everything else comes from that. Now, the verse that was the title, As a Man Thinketh in his heart, so he is, or so is he, depending on which translation it is the framework, right, for virtually everything. This is a Christian precept. It's something that Jesus is said to have said, but it's also present in some of the prophets as well. Mind is the master power. As we think, so we are, which became the title of my version of James Allen's works. I took several pieces of these other books and put them together as my summary of James Allen's teachings, and I call it As We Think, So We Are. So in the next point of main concepts, he says, all that we achieve and all that we fail to achieve is the direct result of our own thoughts. Everything we experience is a result of our thoughts. So if we achieve something, marvelous. If we don't achieve something, well, we did it. And that's hard to get in a culture that is absolutely determined to make us think that we can blame someone outside of us for everything that happens to us. But that's not where James was coming from. And it's not where I come from either. It's not what New Thought is all about. It is all about these points. The third point, we are the makers of ourselves by virtue of the thoughts we choose and encourage. Okay? There's always going to be some running thought underneath that we were trained to think that is about how things aren't okay. But we choose and encourage. There's a Native American tradition that, a young boy goes to one of the elders and says, I don't understand. I have this thought and this thought and this thought and this thought. And the elder says, all right, well, you have the hungry wolf and the satisfied wolf. Which wolf are you going to choose, right? We all have that. We get to choose and encourage the thoughts. And in fact, he's the one who provided the image of our mind as a garden in which we eliminate the weeds and we encourage the plants that we choose. The fourth point in his main concepts, when people find out that their own resentment is all that must be eradicated and begin to put love in its place, the appearance of evil will dissolve for lack of sustenance. Most of us have long cherished resentments. For some of us, it's about what happened to us in childhood. For a few of us, it's about what some teacher did or some boss did or some government is doing or has done. And that resentment is the thought process that brings forth more of that experience. That's the essence of what he's trying to help us get. When we can dissolve that resentment, when we can eradicate it with whatever technique works, and there are many of them out there, and begin to put love in its place. That's what forgiveness is. We are given love, peace, and power for the old resentments, angers, and upsets. Yes? Then the appearance of evil, that is that which we are manifesting in the world around us that fits those resentments, must dissolve because there's nothing supporting it. And finally, he says, our body shows what we've been thinking. Emmett Hopkins, on her own path, a continent away on the other side of the ocean, at about the same time, is saying very much the same thing. The face and form will show you what you have been thinking. More concepts, a little more detail on the next slide. Aspiration, meditation, and devotion are the primary means that people in all ages have employed to reach higher modes of thought, more profound levels of peace, and vaster realms of knowledge. All traditions, including Buddhism, Hinduism, any of the other Persians, Egyptians, it really doesn't matter, and Christianity. When a monk is participating in the St. Benedict's rule, 4 hours a day are being spent in meditation, 4 hours a day in devotion, and 4 hours a day in work. That work is the aspiration, right? More profound levels of peace and vaster realms of knowledge. And then the really big thing that James Allen offers, not only every one of us, but everyone across the world, and so powerful in today's world. If you would have the world emancipated from misery and suffering, then emancipate yourself. This is a boy who grew up in Charles Dickens' ugly, industrial, Victorian England and emancipated himself. He knows whereof he speaks. And in his books, you can find guidelines. And in my book, As We Think, So We Are, I incorporated those guidelines for his recommendations on how to do that. The second part of this point, the second bullet, if you want your home and your surroundings to be happy, then be happy. Be happy. He says you can transform everything around you if you simply transform yourself. From the mind up, I would add. And he would indeed. We are transforming our thinking. Change your thinking, change your life is another shorthand for that from Ernest Holmes. But the essence is what we are focusing on in our mental activity is what we are experiencing, and we can change that. This was huge. He wrote this prior to Thomas Troward's writings, and he wrote it about the same time as the New Thought world was beginning to emerge. So in the next slide, we get to see some of his process, and that is to replace what he called the 10 sorrow-producing thoughts, which he named as lust or vanity, hatred and pride, avarice and doubt, self-indulgence, dark belief, self-seeking and delusion. Those ideas would then get in the way of our experiencing happiness. He says it is the abandonment of the lust for enjoyment, but not of enjoyment itself. Okay? So we enjoy what is. We don't lust after more, right? The destruction of the thirst for pleasure, but not of pleasure itself. We take pleasure in what is. We don't seek it out and try to make it happen, get more of it, right? The annihilation of the selfish longing for love and power and possessions. That longing is what's keeping it away from us when we know it is. And this is where Neville Goddard came in about 20 years later and offered processes. But James Allen is encouraging people in 1901 and 1902 to look at this way of being. Now, James Allen's work was powerful in the very beginning of the New Thought movement, but then it got kind of pushed away as new American teachers emerged. And this idea that we could change our thinking became part of a different realm of thought, and that is the successful transformative business world. Some scholars have placed this as the masculine arm of New Thought, whereas Emma and Emily and Nona Brooks and even Ernest Holmes and Charles are the feminine arm of New Thought, which is to say focusing on relationships, focusing on our place in the world, focusing on our immediate environments, where James Allen's work moved into how do we create something in the world that is more good for us and for the people around us. And we will talk about those guys as we come to them in the future. In the next slide, we get to see more of how he made this process happen. And that is we're replacing those 10 sorrow-producing qualities with what he called the 10 divine qualities, saying that purity and fearlessness are the qualities of the divine. This is similar to Charles Fillmore's 10 or 12 powers, right? James Allen had 10. Patience and knowledge, humility and wisdom, self-sacrifice in the sense of not going for what you think you want in favor of what is really best for all of us, okay? And there's a caveat to that, because what's really good for me is always best for everyone. But if I can let go of what I think I want, if I can go of my lust, if I can let go of my greed and allow what is truly best for me, that can be thought of as self-sacrifice. And that's where he's going. But also the compassion, the realization that when someone around us is struggling and suffering, we can feel with them, for them, and we can do and act in ways that are supportive of them. At the same time, in the last point there, we can be self-reliant. Now, notice it's not obvious here, but the self-reliance that he's talking about, this love that he's talking about, in Emerson's essay, Self-Reliance, as you may recall from when we talked about Emerson, the word self is capitalized. This is not my egoic self. This is not that part of me that thinks that, I can do that all by myself and I have to make it happen by myself. No, 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 no. Emerson would never, ever have encouraged that. Emerson was helping people realize there is a greater self, a higher self that we can rely on fully, which again is part of the core teachings of the New Thought movement. Now, the process that James Allen encouraged was very much the same process as Ben Franklin used in Ben Franklin's autobiography. He talks about how when he was in England, Ben does, talks about when he completed his apprenticeship as a printer in Boston, he went to England and was a journeyman. And as a journeyman, well, we could say he sowed his wild oats. He was quite active in the bars and other places in the evenings. During the day, he never drank beer or ale. He discovered that that got in the way of his working. So he drank water during the day, but he often played at night. In any case, on the ship coming back to the States when he was 26, Ben Franklin said, okay, I got to break some of these old habits. And so he came up with this chart and he listed the habits and he listed out 31 days. And he said, okay, for 31 days, I will not do this. And if I do it, whoops, I'm starting the 31 days over again. And then as soon as he could complete 31 days without that habit or that thought, then he would move on to the next. What Allen is encouraging is the same kind of thing. If we go back to the previous slide, we can see the sorrow-producing qualities. These, lust, vanity, hatred, pride, etc., would be ones you would not experience. You would choose not to experience for 31 days. You'd pick one and go, okay. In Alan's case, it's 28 days because 28 days is a full moon cycle. And that's really what we're talking about. Ben Franklin was talking about the calendar. So you pick your issue, your thought, your resentment, if you will, and you go for 28 days without changing, without doing it. And then in the next one, you pick the one you want to focus on. You go for 28 days and you make sure that that is present every day. And as modern psychology will say, then you have formed a new habit. That's the essence of the gardening process that James Allen was encouraging. Weed out the processes, the feelings, the thoughts, the habits of thought and speaking, and then replace them with the flowers, the blooms, the powerful, divine qualities that you want to experience more of. And the folks who formed the Brotherhood or the Society of Virtue were saying, we're choosing to do this. We're choosing to focus on and become these qualities. And doing that, they believed and knew for themselves that there was going to be a transformation in their personal being, in the life that they were living, and ultimately in the world around them. So this went on for about a dozen years. In the next slide, we'll see what the last stages of James's life was about. He would go every morning before dawn to a rock on a hillside overlooking the sea. And he would be there for 2 to 3 hours every time. When the sun was fully up and he had begun to be warmed by the sun on the days that he could be, although in that part of the world, most of the time it was gray and wet, so he didn't get to get dried off. He would go down and then he would sit down and write what had come to him, as I said. And that might be another 2 or 3 hours of writing in his den, near an open window, often with a fire, but not always. And he would write these books. He would also write letters. He would share these ideas. Now, for those of you who have paid attention to my work, you may be aware that I teach 4 S's in spiritual success. Silence. study, sharing, and service. Okay. I generally encourage doing the study first, but James lived by the silence first. He would go into the silence and spend 2 or 3 hours in that deep space of contemplation, of not thinking sometimes, of following his thoughts sometimes, of reflection sometimes, but in the silence. And then he would go into his study, his den, his place of where the words are. And he would pick up a book that reinforced or explained something. And then he would sit and write. He would share what it was that he was experiencing in the combination of study and silence. And then when he was done writing, he would go out into the garden and he would work in the garden as another mode of integrating everything that he was experiencing. And then in the evening, he would serve. He would be there fully present, helping his wife, serving these gentlemen that were coming to visit. And sometimes there were women with them. And also being there to be in conversation with them, to share with them at a deeper level, to serve them from their needs what it was that he had to teach. So study, silence, sharing, and service. That's the 4 S's in spiritual success. And those conversations focused on those people would sometimes go way into the night. So he often would get maybe 2, maybe 4 hours of sleep. And in 1912, he passed away. We think it was pneumonia because of everything I just described. Not enough sleep, lots of time in the cold and wet, lots of time focusing on the head so much that the body was not cared for. But we don't exactly know why he passed. We know the body was cremated, that his brother Thomas came and led a service for him. And we also know that from that experience, Lily continued to run the guest house and continued to publish his writings. So some of his works show a 1919 or even 1920 publication date, but they were things he had written. And, well, I'm guessing maybe Lily edited, possibly contributed a bit to, in the years following his passing. What we have with James Allen is, almost a classic Horatio Alger story, right? Someone born from nothing and creating. But we also have the beginning, as I said, of the self-help movement, the beginning of the movement in which men going into business could be given tools. And to a large extent, everything that the Nightingale Conant Company published, that Wallace Wattles taught, that Charles Hannell taught, and we'll be looking at them later, almost everything that they taught was based on what James Allen came to understand through his research, his life, and his sharing in that period between about 1880 and 1912, for which we are very grateful, and we will learn more from as we go forward. So that brings us to the end of thinking about James Allen, and as we think, but I'd like to take us a little further than this. We have a few more minutes in this program, so I'd like you to consider, as a person who is possibly already on the New Thought path, or someone considering the possibility of a New Thought path, what is it that you have resented in your life that you haven't been willing or able to let go of yet? I almost guarantee there is something. The reason? You're still in a body. The reason? You're still being curious about these things and wondering what could work maybe if I put it together right? What James found was simply knowing that love is all that is, and practicing, choosing that loving, knowing of the good being fully present around us, of the universe constantly creating more good for us and for all, those principles, filling his mind with those principles and allowing these other ideas to go away. He could have had so much resentment. Born in poverty, born in a factory town, horrid environment, food, air, woof, working in the factory at such a young age, not allowed to go to college, all of those things. He could have had lots and lots of resentments, but he chose not to. We can all have lots and lots of resentments. Are we going to choose to hang on to them? Or are we going to allow ourselves to be fully who we are and let go of them? We all have longings. Again, he's saying what we long for isn't here. What we know we already have can be here now. So that idea that we can long for something, long for a time where, things are properly done, or long for someone to change, or long for a situation to be different, or any of the things, long for a hot fudge sundae. I don't care what it is you're longing for a particular car, a particular person, a job, a house, a lifestyle, is keeping it away. What James Allen was able to help people see is by choosing to focus on the presence of the loving good in its generic form, the specifics show up. One of the people that he quotes is that state in the Bible, that point in the Bible where the man who is suddenly king by name of Solomon goes into the silence, and in the silence hears a voice saying, "All right, you're king, what do you want?" And his response to the voice is, "Give me the wisdom to guide my people so they may be well." And the voice says, "Absolutely, granted." And so Solomon becomes known as the wisest king, right? But the voice goes on to say, "And because you have asked for this, you shall have everything else." What is it that we need to be focusing on, each of us, individually and collectively, that will allow us to experience the good that is who and what we truly are, that will allow us to have the home, allow us to have the friends, allow us to have the meaningful work, not because we've gone after them, but because we have focused on that which is the divine quality that is ours to embody and experience fully in this life, here and now. That's the gift of what James Allen offers. And it's the gift of what the New Thought movement is designed to help us accomplish. And all these classes and all these teachers are basically offering that. Can I let go of what doesn't serve me in my thought patterns and feelings? And can I bring in that which truly serves not only me, but all beingness? In my life and world, there have been lots of opportunities to have resentments. I grew up in our culture. I'm a woman. We all have them. It's it. I can focus on those. And when I do, I'm fascinated because the world around me starts spinning downwards. And I get more and more frustration and exasperation until I remember, oh, wait a minute. What am I doing here? What am I doing here? How could I possibly be having these thoughts? And then I kind of take apart the experiences and I see, oh, look what I was thinking there. Look what I was thinking there. Look how that happened. Oh, my goodness. And then I remember what is true, what is real, these divine qualities, these qualities of being that are the essence of all being, the wisdom, the beauty, the joy. And I give myself opportunities to be absorbed in them. Fortunately, I live in a part of the world that has some of the most beautiful scenes, experiences possible. I live on the Oregon coast. Yes. But anywhere I go, I can find it. I can see it in his smile. I can look at the sky. I can see trees against the sky. That's a huge one for me. Anywhere I go, I can find something that reminds me that what I was thinking could not possibly be real, because this is what is real. This beauty, this joy, this opening. When James Allen went up on that hillside every morning and saw that incredible view, that helped him remember, helped him turn away from the thoughts, the feelings, the words, the actions that no longer serve anyone. And when people would show up in his house and they would be wrestling with their issues, he would be fully grounded in truth, in the goodness, in the power that is all that is. And he would help them learn to think in ways that would allow their lives and their worlds to be the heavenly life that we all are born to experience. This is what he offered us. This is what the whole New Thought movement offers us. And the New Thought movement understood that, because when they met in London in 1914, they elected him vice president, and he managed that conference. They knew he was one of the foundations. In fact, at that meeting, the New Thought Alliance became the International New Thought Alliance, and he was at the center of it. James Allen, a man most of us have never heard of, set the foundation, along with all these other beautiful people that we have come to know in our journey as we look at the New Thought roots and branches. Thank you very much for joining me. Have a wonderful week.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.